Thank you for joining us, and I'm sorry we can't be all together this time of year, whether we're north, south, east, or west. But this is a wonderful opportunity for us to have a Cancer Council meeting. We're promising all of ourselves that next time we'll do this in person. I hope that certainly is the case, and I'm looking forward to it and to further discussions with all of you. Today, I thought we would shift a little bit from our presenting a highfalutin scientific discovery or the like, and step back and look at our cancer center as a whole and remind ourselves just of how unique this cancer center is. And we want to give you a background of where we've come from, how we got to this level of being a consortium cancer centers, one of the premier cancer centers in the country, with our partner hospitals, University Hospitals and Cleveland Clinic, and really providing guidance for cancer research throughout the region, and frankly, a number of leadership roles around the country. So if I could move to the next slide, I'm just going to do a few introductory slides. With John's support. There we go. First, I want to just comment on the impact that Jerry McDonough and his wife Helen have had on our center. Jerry passed away just a little while ago, and his wife a couple of years earlier. Jerry was one of the kindest and thoughtful leaders this city has seen, leading a number of companies and providing incredibly thoughtful advice from his pretty modest upbringing and modest starts. But he learned how to be a sage early on, and he transmitted that to us. We asked him to be the chair of our newly constructed Case Cancer Council. And he reluctantly said, okay. And then after about an hour of conversing with me and with Pete, he said, why do we need another cancer center? And so I realized, and that's the topic of today, that in fact, answering that question is a paramount item when most of us as patients think about cancer centers as a place to go to get medical care. And most of us as physicians, physician leaders, scientists around the country really look to the National Cancer Institute as the source of truth, if you will, for high quality research, high quality care. And I want to go over with you, or I'll have my partner go over with you this afternoon, why that makes such a difference. And so Jerry's philanthropic support, intellectual support, and leadership support for this center has really been transformational over the years, not the least of which is to remind us that every year he's given us a large source of funds to help us in our bike ride efforts for a fundraising effort with the Cleveland Clinic through the Velosano bike ride. And his support for that over the years has been really quite important. Next slide. So I want to take you back to what an NCI designated cancer center is. It started with the Cancer Act in 1971. You'll notice that I have elected to show a picture of Mary Lasker, an incredible philanthropist and advocate for cancer research, who actually convinced President Nixon at the time. He and I didn't do so well, that is President Nixon, given the time, to pursue this act of creating a separate entity called the National Cancer Institute within and distinct from the National Institutes of Health in a period of time when that was just a couple of buildings in Bethesda. And in fact, he committed to a war on cancer, which we all know we're still in the middle of pursuing. He did a couple of things which are really critical to the success of the National Cancer Institute, and that was that the director is a presidential appointment, not an appointment from the National Institutes of Health. And it has a separate line item of appropriations, so-called the bypass budget for cancer research, which is still in place today. What happened and we all know that things don't necessarily evolve the way you expect or have foreknowledge of, is that the creation of the NCI designated cancer centers has been the best organized effort and activity around any medical effort, disease focus, and coordination of research and clinical activities in the country. It is far more coordinated, advanced, and has had far more impact than all the other efforts combined to study other diseases. And so it really has become a model for how to pursue understanding and improved outcomes of a disease, in this case, cancer. Next slide. So I'm now going to take you on a little journey, and I'm going to turn the platform over to John Pinarchian, the unsung hero of this cancer center. John is the Associate Director for Administration of our cancer center, and he's going to take you through what NCI designation means, what we know about the other centers, how we view ourselves, and what our history has been. I'll remind you, as we all intrinsically know, what I learned my first quarter of my first year in medical school when we had our dog surgery course, which was the first assistant makes a surgeon look good. And I've come to realize what an incredible understatement that is. The first assistant saves lives. The first assistant keeps a surgeon out of trouble, maybe out of jail for some mistake he might have otherwise made, helps the medical students and the other assistants during the operation, make sure that the operating room runs on time, under budget, efficiently, is sterile. So the surgeon would be helpless without the first assistant, and likewise, I would be helpless without John Pinarchian, who understands the centers around the country better than anybody in the city of Cleveland, perhaps anywhere in the country. So with that mild introduction, John, take it away.
Thanks, Dr. Gerson. That's very kind of you. I'd like to offer my warmest welcomes to the Cancer Council. It's nice to see so many familiar faces. As Dr. Gerson said, I've been a part of the Cancer Center business for 9 years now. I started with our GI group, and I've met some of you through that obligation and that fun activities. And then I've been promoted to run the Cancer Center as the head administrator for the past 2 years. So this has really become a dream job for me, and one that I'm proud of. Learning from Stan and the other leaders of the center is really quite a treat. So I'm here today, as Stan mentioned, to talk a little bit about what it means to be a designated cancer center from the National Cancer Institutes. And we're going to go on a journey of what makes this job so exciting, what makes this cancer center so exciting, and really focus in on the importance of the why. Nationally, there are 51 comprehensive cancer centers all over the country, as you can see on the map. And these cancer centers are different in that they have the breadth and depth of expertise in various areas, including basic research, clinical research, translational research, and population-based research. So these centers get it done throughout every aspect of what it takes really to treat a cancer patient. There are other 13 regular cancer centers in the country, so they have expertise in basic and clinical research, and they haven't quite gotten to the translational components. And then there are 7 basic laboratory centers, and they focus exclusively on laboratory research, and they do not see patients. So the benefit of such a designation is the culture that it brings. So we are not competing with any of our peers here. We're a team. We transfer patients and research back and forth. We have agreements to transfer material with a significant amount of these centers. And then we have a vast network of clinical trials, which we'll talk about in a little bit. The importance of the why. So why is it important to have a NCI designated cancer center? Why does any of this matter? So these centers develop and translate scientific knowledge from lab to patients. And one of the more important aspects of a center is our drive and our mandate to provide services for our unique needs. And this is defined by the NCI as our catchment area. I'm going to talk a little bit more in detail on our specific catchment area in a couple slides. So there's 250,000 newly diagnosed cancer patients a year in the country. And then there's 350,000 cancer patients treated at designated cancer centers annually. We have improved cancer treatment outcomes and survival as a cohort, as a group. And then 10 to 18% of cancer patients participate in clinical trials at designated cancer centers versus 3% nationally. So if you took out cancer centers, designated cancer centers from the equation, the national clinical trial rate would drop significantly. What we do is we coordinate and collaborate across studies and across centers. And this is what we talked about earlier. And then this includes our National Clinical Trial Network, which is an activity of cooperative groups and scientists and clinical researchers across the country that open trials at each of their own centers to get outcomes faster. And then we have, we're a member of a National Comprehensive Cancer Network, which includes 31 of our leading cancer centers across the country. And we've come together to refer patients between centers, refer research projects, open trials together, and so on. Why does any of it matter? Well, 80% of the funding that goes to the National Cancer Institute comes to comprehensive cancer centers or comes to designated cancer centers. So this is the bulk of the investment in cancer research in the country comes to designated centers. A little bit about our center, a quick history lesson. This exceptional center was designated in 1987. We became comprehensive in 1998. And then in 2004, the Cleveland Clinic joined us, joined the consortium, which was previously with UH and Case. At that same year, Dr. Gerson took over as director. So in the 34 years of our existence, we've had 17 with Dr. Gerson and 17 without. So he has done remarkable to lead the center forward over those years. A quick snapshot of who we are as a center. We have 6 research programs. So these are areas that we have focused our activities on and common themes. We have 13 shared resources that really support all of the research activities in our centers. You see our membership there. We are growing quickly to well over 400 members. We have over $58 million in peer-reviewed funding from the NCI, or from the National Institutes of Health, and 30 million of that is from NCI, direct funding. We see over 19,000 new patients every year from our hospital partners. And then we put a little over 1,700 of those patients on clinical trial. This was last year's numbers, slightly impacted by, of course, COVID-19 pandemic. And then we mentor trainees. This is important. We'll get back to the trainee component. And then we publish all of our findings in high impact journals throughout. So our catchment area, the unique area that we are tasked with serving. So we have defined this as the 15 county area surrounding Northeast Ohio, obviously the city of Cleveland, where the cancer center is located. This demographically makes up 4 million Ohioans live in this area, which is about 34% or so of the population based on 11.5 million population in the state itself, representing just over 36% of new cancer cases. You can see the breakdown of demographics here. We serve directly, 78% of our patients come from our catchment area, physically live in our catchment area. So making a really big impact on their unique needs. So this slide is a new tool that we have that I want to talk about. And it's one way we're making an impact in our communities is by really understanding our data. So we have a database called the Northeast Ohio Cancer Assessment and Surveillance Engine, NeoCase for short, where we have the ability to pinpoint down to the zip code various level of disease and various incidence levels and so on of specific diseases. So this is a case study on breast cancer where the results of this study show that the city of East Cleveland by zip code has a higher incidence of female breast cancer than the rest of the area. So this data is really remarkable and really gives our investigators the opportunity to go into communities and really make an impact on the diseases that matter the most. Okay. Ohio Cancer Registry is feeding this. There is a lot of data from local mammogram facilities, cancer care facilities, Ohio Medicaid survey data, and so on. So this is a remarkable tool that we're proud of that we have in our cancer center, and it's one of the shared resources that we've talked about. Breast cancer, of course, is a top 5 cancer that we see in the catchment area as well. Sustained impact. So why are we here, and what have we done? We've made some remarkable discoveries over the past 34 years. This is just a select handful. The discovery of P53 in the early days is arguably one of the most important cancer genes known. And the work of Dr. Kong has really helped understand the key mechanisms of cancer stimulation. We are also fortunate enough to have a cancer center director who's done impactful science. And Dr. Gerson, of course, is a leader in stem cells and immuno-oncology and stem cell therapy. Recently, over the past 3 years, we have worked hard on this new esophageal screening device that Dr. Chalk and collaborators have worked on. And it's really going to make an impact in how we diagnose esophageal cancer. So we're really proud of the work there. More importance of the why, 86% of all approved cancer drugs are actually developed in designated cancer centers. So this is a bit of the activities that lead to a drug development. The biology is done in the lab, the targeted validations through discovery of the drug. And then, of course, transitions into preclinical work. And then finally, with early phase clinical trials to really get the drug in human. So these are done remarkably well at designated cancer centers and specifically comprehensive cancer centers. We have the expertise needed to do this work, including shared resources, expertise on FDA compliance, regulatory support, and so on. In my opinion, one of the biggest benefits from developing a drug in a designated cancer center is our tolerance for high-risk research. So the National Cancer Institute funds a lot of our research activities, but they are making bets that they could win. What gives us the ability to do some of the high-risk endeavors is philanthropic support and other support areas. And that's really what drives some of the high-risk research that we do. Why we do clinical trials? Many of the cancers, advanced cancers, are not cured. So we standard of care simply doesn't work. So we have to get into trials with different new drugs or combination treatments. We could take discoveries from the lab and we could safely test them in a trial. We could perform first-in-human studies that require careful monitoring. We have the ability to collaborate and link to the other cancer centers to confirm our results. And then we can link nationally through our cooperative groups. We partner regularly with pharma to test their new drugs. And then we provide the FDA with high-quality data to actually make approval on some of these drugs. And of course, we have a goal to get new treatments from concept to treatment out the door. So the NCI designated cancer centers, when you break it down, we have the infrastructure to support clinical trials and clinical research. There's a lot of moving pieces when you talk about a clinical trial, and we are proud to have, as a designated center, the ability to do this for our community. So some of the advancements we've made protecting the population from cancer locally. We've sponsored the Tobacco 21 legislation. We were one of the first on board with the Tobacco 21 legislation that implemented and effectively moved the legal smoking age in the city of Cleveland from 18 to 21. So this has been adopted by various cities throughout the state, and there's actually some states in the country that have a full state policy of 21 and over. In the state of Ohio, it is city by city, and we are proud that Cleveland is one that has increased their smoking age from 18 to 21. We've improved screening in the areas of breast cancer, esophageal cancer through the brushing device that we mentioned earlier that Dr. Chalk and his team developed. We've received a new award from the Bristol-Myers Squibb to increase our screening rate of prostate cancer in African-American men. We are taking our partners in the barbershops, so through our community advisory board, and we're showing informational videos at barbershops on the importance of prostate screening for African-American men, and then offering initial blood work to test for markers for prostate cancer. And then we have more than tripled our HPV vaccination in an 11-year-old population in the city. So, a lot of, screening is incredibly important, obviously, for cancer. And we've made some strong headway in that area. And then we've brought numerous trials to the community, local and national level participation happening in our center. We're opening trials from other centers, developed at other centers here. The more patients we get on trials, the quicker we can get to the outcome. And then the National Clinical Trials Network of Cancer Centers is what I had mentioned earlier, gives us the opportunity to participate globally in cancer trials. And then we have a strong portfolio of early phase studies, so bringing new treatments, new therapies into market and into patient care here in Cleveland. Importance of the why. We have a dedicated effort to train the next cohort of young physicians and scientists to become cancer researchers and doctors. So we have a unique pipeline program starting in middle school and all the way through postdoctoral training that we offer in our designated cancer center. The designation and our comprehensiveness allows us to focus on these efforts. Specifically, we have 2 federally funded from the National Cancer Institute grants to focus on high school, middle school to high school, and then undergraduate trainees. These grants focus on the community and the profile of the community made up in the city of Cleveland. And we engage these students young. Like I said, starting at middle school, and then we have dedicated programs in high school and undergraduate. And these are immersion programs where we bring these kids in, of course, non-COVID years to campus, and we put them in our labs for the summer, and they learn how to do research, and they learn how to ask questions that make an impact in their education and in their development as a future workforce of cancer centers. In fact, my daughter and her best friend just finished the middle school program. It was done virtually this year, and it was an 8-week Zoom hour every Sunday or Saturday. And they learned a ton about what cancer is, how cancer works, different types of cancers, prevention, and so on. So, there's a lot of students getting a ton of education from our designated cancer center, and it'll really make a difference down the road for them. Our impact here, the National Institutes of Health grant support is significant, but we also rely heavily on the pilot dollars and the dollars we collect from our Research Innovation Fund to make pilots that are going to be more high risk, high reward. We do, however, have a very strong return on investment from these pilots, somewhere around 8-to-1, where every dollar that we have raised and spent and awarded on a pilot is returning $8 of federal grant money. So this is a significant return on investment and really makes all of this matter and ties all of it together. We have high clinical trial participation even in a tough, challenging year, we put nearly 1,800 people on 1,800 cancer patients on interventional trials. 900 or so were treatment trials. So we're really driving that impact through our clinical activities. Innovation, we've discovered new cancer pathways, new drugs. We hold numerous patents, publications, and we are recognized by our peers at other cancer centers. As Dr. Gerson mentioned in his opening remarks, that we collaborate closely with our other centers and we work together to get what we're doing done. And of course, the ultimate goal is to reduce the cancer burden in our community through screening, treatment, survivorship, which we have a strong focus in all three areas in our cancer center. Finally, we are the three institutions come together to form this exceptional cancer center, one that we are all proud of, one that we should all be proud of in the city of Cleveland. And some of the future focus areas for our centers include the efforts in immuno-oncology, women's cancers, drug development, and some of the cool things we're now doing with artificial intelligence in cancer treatment and cancer diagnosis. So I want to end there. I want to give an opportunity to answer questions for both Dr. Gerson and I are available for questions. And I'd like to just open the floor. And I don't know, Christy, if you want to sort of MC some questions, we could certainly do that.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Thank you, John. And I think what I want to stress is one of the main points of having this meeting is that we all have a chance to have Dr. Gerson here that ask him anything. We often take advantage of it when we have his attention. So whether it's cancer research or the future of what the Case Comprehensive Cancer Center is, or even something more personal that you are comfortable sharing with the group, now's the time. Peter, I saw your microphone go off. We could, I'll let you start.
Sure. Thank you for the presentation today. I'm interested in how the national collaborative approach to the development of vaccines in our COVID epidemic impacts on the methodology of cancer research.
So that's a complicated question with a bunch of layers. So let me unravel a bit of it, okay? So when COVID hit in February, most of us think of it as March, but really February, the National Cancer Institute took up the call from the National Institutes of Health and took its internal resources in Bethesda and Rockville, Maryland, and pivoted immediately to spending about half of its time and effort on the vaccine development, understanding antibodies, developing an efficient screening test, providing a national resource for access to samples. It also put out a huge call to the cancer research community to said, you got to focus on this. And our center responded dramatically. We, for instance, were the first to publish the risk that I just mentioned to Dr. Desai as we were starting, that our patients with blood cancers, myeloma, lymphoma, leukemia, had to develop and then succumb to COVID infection because of their immunocompromised state. We helped nationally, and our cancer center as well, with understanding how the vaccine worked. We helped accrue cancer patients to the vaccine clinical trials. Of course, the infrastructure for the conceptual development of the COVID vaccines from Moderna and Pfizer took a huge amount of preparatory research. As a side story, which you weren't prepared for, I've been developing a cancer drug for about a decade. Part of that effort has been with a small group of scientists at the National Cancer Institute. 3 years ago, one of those young scientists graduated from his research on my drug with the information he learned at the National Cancer Institute and went to work at some small little startup called Moderna. And so we've got a specific link to Moderna. In addition, the initial CEO of Moderna went off and helped us start a company in town called Coventra, which is developing a neurologic disorder. So we've got connections to the links of the National Cancer Institute, to the discovery engine that gave rise to the vaccine that we're all appreciating. And we've pursued a whole bunch of research efforts to try to understand the impact of the virus on our cancer patients, especially those who are immunocompromised and can't mount an immune response to the vaccine.
I don't want to take over here, but just one follow-up, Stan. I'm specifically interested in, how the national collaborative approach, the sort of the methodology that was utilized for the cancer virus vaccines, whether it has any impact as to how cancer research methodology might develop from here.
Yeah, thanks. So there's two elements. One is, how do we get this to the patient population? So the concept of having nationally driven clinical trials is important. It's, again, something that cancer centers have been doing for a living. And that's the blueprint that the NIH used as they rolled out the vaccine clinical trials and the databases. Most of the database efforts were coordinated through the National Cancer Institute. Now you can ask, why in the world is the National Cancer Institute studying COVID vaccine? The flip is, what have we learned about COVID vaccine development and that technology, and can any of that be applied to cancer research? And the answer is that, just like we've seen many other things catapult forward much more quickly, we have a much more active vaccine development effort in cancers taking place here in our cancer center than we had 3 years ago. And there's a variety of components, many of them directly linked to the COVID world. One is the development of novel viruses that in fact infect tumor cells. Now, in that slide that John showed you, he talked about Sinjin Kung developing an understanding of how cancer signals happen, and Sandy Markowitz's work on P53. There are situations in which we now find viruses that only grow in tumor cells with those abnormalities. So the rest of your body is completely immune to the virus, and the only cells that get infected are the tumor cell, and the virus kills the tumor cell. So those are now in clinical trials. Some of them are showing dramatic results, including one in glioma, a trial that we've just started here at university hospitals, and we started at the Cleveland Clinic soon as well. So there's some really direct relationships. In addition, in the city of Cleveland, we'll be building 2 vector production facilities, partially for the next virus whenever it comes around, and partially also to develop tumor vaccines because of these competencies. So there's a direct interaction at many, many different levels.
Rick, I see you raised your hand. You're on mute, so just a reminder to turn that off.
Dr. Gerson, a question for you. Given the natural, the currency for academic scientists is being published, probably more so than even being paid. And you have that natural tension of competition among scientists, and then if that isn't bad enough, among the Cleveland institutions that are in stiff competition with one another. What processes, what have you done or with the cancer group to try to ameliorate or at least minimize some of that
Thanks.
natural competition.
Thanks for, I bring that right out into the front, Rick, because it is an important item. And the truth of the matter is that there's a certain amount of dynamic tension there. So let's just unravel it a little bit. So, I don't want somebody else to copy my invention until I'm sure that I'm able to publish it. I don't want to tell anybody about anything I'm doing until I can patent it. There are occasions in which there's competition between research groups anywhere in the world, let alone in the city of Cleveland. But what we do in the city is we use those 6 scientific programs to corral the 300 plus investigators that have research programs into those 6 groups. Each has 30, 40, 50 members. And they present their research to each other. And what that does is it builds collaborative intelligence so that there really is a spirit of collaboration and joint invention. Many, many, many of our publications and our inventions are joint between at least 2 of the 3 institutions. So it's actually much more common to see a collaborative effort take place. Luckily, the prowess of our tech transfer group is also quite good. So they can very quickly move things through a technology development and patent space so that it can be shared very quickly. Once it can be shared, the collaborative spirit takes over. More than half of our research involves another institution. And that's a hint about how much collaboration is just intrinsic with what we do.
Which is tougher, the inter-institution competition or the inter-scientist competition?
No, I think, in fact, what happens is that people seek out the best person they can find because they can't do it all themselves.
Good,
I think
good.
the collaborative spirit is overwhelming. Now, yes, in any intellectual group, you're going to have differences of opinion and different perspectives. And you sort of say, well, I'm not going to listen to that person again. But for the most part, it's a learning and collaborative effort. And certainly the NCI designated centers are designed for that. And I'll remind you that, for instance, you're well aware of the GI Spore. Well, the GI Spore has an advisory group that includes 6 other national GI spores. They're direct competitors, but they bring the group together every year to talk out the best approach. So we force a collaborative environment.
Yeah. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? I may not be able to see everybody on my screen. Feel free to start talking if so. Well, if not, I'd be happy to lob one out there and maybe even put a couple people on the spot too. So first of all, I want to take a moment to thank Pete Weinberger, who is our chairman of our Case Cancer Council and provides excellent leadership to help us promote this center, not only throughout the city of Cleveland, but throughout the country. And also Linda Leatherberry is on the Zoom. She has established a cohort in Naples, Florida, and has expanded our reach quite significantly in that area as well. So what I'd like to toss out to either Stan or Pete or Linda, if you can share from your perspective, most of us, maybe a few of us, are not scientists or physicians. I'm looking at you, Dr. Desai, of course you are. How can somebody like us get more involved with the Cancer Center, whether it be through the council or through the Research Innovation Fund or patient advocacy groups, et cetera? If anyone would be willing to share your own words, that would be great.
Well, I'm happy to share, and I don't think my story is that unique because the way I got involved was my clinician 13 or 14 years ago was bold enough to discuss with me the possibility of my being involved in a fledgling group that grew into the Cancer Council. And what and it was not about raising money, although that came later, or contributing money, but it was more about, do you want to learn more about your disease, and what's being done in terms of research, and how the Case Comprehensive Cancer Center works in a collaborative approach. And what grew from there was getting exposed to the researchers, young and old, many of whom Stan recruited to Cleveland in a lot of different areas of cancer research, and the sort of the intellectual stimulation that comes from being exposed to these really talented researchers. And then I just want to reiterate that the importance of Jerry McDonough. Jerry preceded me as council chair. I had known Jerry socially, and watched him give counsel and advice to Stan on matters that Jerry was an expert in. And it had nothing to do with cancer research, but it had to do with how you better administer a large organization like this, how you seek out advice, how you manage a large structure, and particularly in Stan's situation, how you manage politically three prominent and sometimes competitive institutions within one umbrella. So that's how I got involved, and how I continue, and why I continue to stay involved, and continue to be stimulated by sessions like this and other contacts that I have with the Cancer Center.
Very good.
Can I just add that implicit in my comments about Jerry and what Pete just said is the importance by us within the Cancer Center of listening. Rick, too, advises and engages with the GI Sport Group, knows well that if nobody's paying attention to his perspective, it doesn't work. So I just want you to know that we listen as best we can, navigate the questions you ask us, and often change our direction. It certainly is often impacted by your perspective and comments.
Very good. And Stan, before I toss it back to you for any closing statements and last big vision that you have for the Cancer Center, I want to share that I hope the excitement from John and Stan of the Cancer Center came through virtually. And I have to point out, they are both incredibly humble about the work they're doing. And they are the last to say that the Cancer Center is continuously ranked one of the best in the country. So we are in the same breath as Memorial Sloan Kettering, Dana-Farber, MD Anderson, when it comes to the depth and breadth of the science in the eyes of the National Institute of Health. So, and Stan Gerson himself is continuously ranked one of the top cancer center directors in the country. So I will say that piece, we are so lucky to have this gem in Cleveland, and we have to make sure it's not the best kept secret. So that was another main point of this. So please tell your friends, please continue to have conversations with us. And Dr. Gerson, I'll send it back over to you for any closing remarks or final questions.
Well, I thank you all for your engagement and persistence with us today. Again, we'd love to see each other in person and communicate directly and have that informal gathering, valued conversation. It is the case, to follow on what Christy said, that I've been in touch with the National Cancer Institute a couple of times the last few weeks over how our consortium works. It's viewed as the prominent consortium of the country, with two major, and we recognize, competing medical centers. And I get continual requests from the NCI about how do we do it? How do we keep the consortium together? How do we partner diverse scientists and clinical activities and priorities. So the NCI is closely watching us. We hope that we'll be announcing in the next couple of weeks the very competent extension request that John Pinarchian helped me put together. I don't want to be quoted, but I suppose it might happen that a week ago, we put in a 12-page document for a 2-year extension for our cancer center because of our exceptional designation. If it's approved, which we actually expect will happen, we'll be the first in the country to have a 2-year extension. And even though we're conversing with you about the continual need we have for philanthropic support and engagement, at $1 million a page, it wasn't a bad expenditure of my time. So I'm hopeful that that gets accomplished. And that will carry us through, if I got these dates correctly, John, the beginning of 2025. Is that right? So
Yes.
We're looking forward to some announcement about that. It may not happen until August, depending on when the NCI boards meet, but we've got that brewing, and it couldn't happen without all of your support.